What's up, guys? This is Jay here with Fantasy Labs, and I'm joined here once again by Brandon Hopper, and we're going to break down this Tuesday, May 17th, 14 game main slate. Brandon, I know you're a fellow Colorado local. It finally stopped raining in our great state. I don't know if it was raining where you're at, but we got sunshine for the rest of the week. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's still raining out there though, so I don't know. I don't know what you guys got up there, but yeah, we're still seeing a little bit of rain. It's all right though.
It's going to rain down home runs tomorrow for us, though.
Yeah, just for our guys that we roster though.
Of course, of course. But yeah, thanks for being back on the pod, having you back here. It's been our viewers are going to get sick of us for how many we're doing in consecutive. So let's jump into
All
this
right.
slate. It is a 15 game slate, but once again, it's similar to the Monday slate where we have a game, that's the Cleveland game that starts earlier. So DraftKings, as of now, doesn't even have that game available. And then FanDuel has an early only slate. But again, we'll be talking about the main slate, which will be 14 games on for this day. So yeah, let's start off kind of our traditional, starting off with the Vegas lines and movement. Looking at this slate as a whole, especially the night before, it's significantly better than the garbage slate that was Monday. So we have a plethora of aces, top pitching options to choose from. And then we kind of have a wide range of hitters as well to choose from, not only because there are more games, but there are more spread apart lines and implied totals. So at the top for implied totals, we have the Cubs at 5.2 currently, the Tigers at 4.7, Diamondbacks at 4.6, and so on. And then at the bottom, we have a stark contrast from the last pod we did with the teams. We have the Angels way at the bottom with 2.4 implied, the Padres at just 2.8, the Nationals at 3.1. So a lot of kind of lower totals with all the great pitchers today. So, and looking at all of this, I know this makes it pretty easy in cash, kind of just choosing. You always want to generally pay up for pitching anyway. So now you have these solid options. This is a Kershaw slate. So I think the way you want to always pay up for pitching, this shouldn't be too terribly difficult if you can find your value bats. So Brandon, since you're primarily a tournament player, how are you kind of attacking not only this slate, but slates in general where you have really high price stud pitchers who will carry heavy ownership?
Yeah, there's so many high price studs tomorrow that I think the ownership will kind of be spread out. And in a tournament, I feel like you don't have to worry about ownership as much when there's several aces that are going to spread out. You just pick one that's going to get you some upside, and you go with him. And, for me, and we'll get into this more, but it was kind of tough for me to find the elite hitters tomorrow. I don't know about you, but I had more luck finding value hitters, even though, they're going to be really contrarian, the ones I'll talk about. But so I plan on paying up for my pitchers definitely and trying to sneak in some value hitters.
Yeah, I'm kind of going along the same lines. I think we just have so many elite pitchers that the ownership will be spread apart somewhat. There are still a few cheap-ish pitchers you can have exposure to, but yeah, generally I'm with you that the upside is just on another level with this top tier of
Mm-hmm.
pitching.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go ahead
Mm-hmm.
and jump right into it. And if you got two pitchers you're looking at in this slate, tournaments or cash, just kind of break them down for us.
Yeah. So I found a guy, looks pretty good. His name's Clayton Kershaw. He throws for the Dodgers. You familiar with him?
Yeah, a little bit. I think his strikeout to walk ratio or something is decent on the season. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. He's pretty good. He's had 5 straight performances, 10 plus Ks, including 2 of those were complete games, 14K and 13K. During those 5 games, he's walked 2 batters, given up a total of 8 runs. 5 of them came in 1 game. So everyone knows about Kershaw's curveball, but arguably his best pitch this year is his slider and his fastball. The Angels hit curveballs well, but they struggle against sliders and fastballs. So I ran a test on the trends page to see what pitchers priced at 13,000 on FanDuel do. They have a +9 plus minus with 66% consistency. Pretty solid, right? So the count is only 18 because obviously we're talking elite pitchers. And of those 18, all of them were Kershaw. No one else has ever been priced 13K on FanDuel. So it just shows that it's not a new price point to him. Like, we don't need to be too worried about the 13K. He still performs. He's perfectly capable of hitting value despite the high salary. The next guy I'm going to have is if you want to go down in price. I like Vincent Velasquez a lot. I've used him several times this year, and he's done well for me. He's been below average the past 2 starts against Miami and Atlanta, and I'm a little hesitant to go with him against Miami again. Because I don't really like to play pitchers that just face the team they're going against. I don't have any data to support it. It's just kind of a hunch. It feels like it's not good. But I know earlier this year he dominated the Mets. He had, I think he scored like 60 FanDuel points in the game, and then 2 starts later he dudded against them. So he's doing the same thing against Miami, only he didn't do well against Miami. Now 2 starts later he's going to go against them. He does have Premier K upside, though, which is what we need in tournaments. He struck out 16 Padres earlier this year, and he cased about 10 batters per 9 innings. I think he'll kind of get lost in the shuffle as far as ownership goes with all these big-name pitchers out there. And on FanDuel, he sports an 89% bargain rating. So that's working in his favor. One thing I don't like about either of my pitchers, though, is they don't really have good umpires. So that makes me a little bit nervous with those guys behind the plate.
Yeah,
What do you think?
Yeah, I think with Kershaw, I wouldn't stress too much about the umpire. But, yeah, I mean, I wish I know with our research you jumped on these 2 before I could get at them, or else I would have had 100% would have had the same 2. So
Did you? Okay.
Well, I would have, but you don't know
Yeah.
for sure. But, yeah.
Well, that's why I got in there and got Kershaw. I left you the other studs. I left you Syndergaard. I left you Scherzer.
Yeah, there are plenty to go around, but yeah, Kershaw. Yeah. I mean, that's a real diamond in the rough you found on this slate. And Velasquez, at his price point, I agree, will definitely be overlooked a little bit. So yeah, I love both the calls. I think I think a lot of people do underweight Kershaw's slider. I did have a slider that was as good as Kershaw's, but I tore my UCL after 1 start, so we'll never see it in the on that level, but it was on its way. It was easily on its way. But
I've heard of it.
Yeah, it made its round throughout Colorado men's league for sure. So I'm sure.
Now, is that underhand softball, or
no way,
or are you throwing?
No way. No, it was legit.
You're throwing over? Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was crazy. I know, it was wild. Something that Kershaw could never ever dream about. But let's keep it moving. I'll talk about my 2 pitchers that are unfortunately not Kershaw or Velasquez. I will say Kershaw is the strongest cash play on the slate. I'll get into that more. But one guy I'm looking at a lot on the slate, especially coming after last game, is Max Scherzer. We briefly discussed the K predictor on the last pod. I want to bring it up again, kind of especially highlighting Scherzer as a guy who has very, very high strikeout potential. As we all know, strikeouts are the most important thing to look at when selecting a pitcher, especially in cash. It just elevates the floor so much, and it's predictable. So you look at the K predictor, and Scherzer's projected to strike out 9.9 batters, which is by far the most amount on this slate. So he has a 98% bargain rating on FanDuel. So that's kind of the site that I would give him consideration for in cash games if you just can't afford Kershaw in cash, which I don't know. I haven't looked at the slate too much in depth, like building a full team to know if I need to save salary with Kershaw or I can find value plays. Probably on FanDuel, I think you can fit Kershaw, but maybe on DraftKings, it'll be a little harder for those value plays. But unfortunately, Scherzer is a bit overpriced on DraftKings relative. So I think FanDuel, he's in cash consideration. It's just hard for me not to go Kershaw on both sides in cash. But Scherzer is a great tournament pivot, of course, coming off that 20 strikeout game. Last time he faced the Mets, who he's facing tomorrow, was at the end of last season, but he had 17 strikeouts. So with his strikeout potential and ceiling, I think you just kind of need exposure to him, even on a Kershaw slate. So one thing you have to do, though, is to monitor the rain in this one. It could kind of ruin and limit his ceiling if there are any delays. So. And then another pitcher I'm looking at, which isn't too surprising, but is Madison Bumgarner. And this kind of highlights the slate that I have 2 very expensive pitchers as my 2 pitching plays, is that these guys are so elite that I think you just need to pay up for them, kind of in cash and tournaments outside of maybe Velasquez and maybe a few other guys. But Bumgarner's another guy I think you just got to pay up. These guys have incredible ceilings. He's the 3rd most favorable park factor out of all starters. He has the 2nd highest projected strikeouts according to the K predictor. The Padres have the 3rd highest strikeout rate in the league. And then, like I said, with Scherzer, Kershaw is expected to be, very highly owned. Scherzer is. So I think Bumgarner will actually find his way into being a contrarian tournament play, kind of like we talked about with how you made that a point in the Vegas lines, just that these expensive guys their exposure will be spread. So I think Bumgarner's a guy who you'll be surprised at his ownership on this slate. So it's just kind of the top tier of pitchers that just have such a higher upside than the next couple of tiers is why I have two expensive pitchers as my plays. Let's go ahead or you got.
Yeah, real quick, what do you think about Scherzer's ownership for tomorrow?
Coming off the 20, the big 2-0, I think it will be, in tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think at his price, but I think on FanDuel you'll see a decent amount of him with that 98% bargain rate, which is pretty incredible. I think we'll see around 20%.
Do you? Even going against Syndergaard? What's the line on that?
Do. The money line. It's I believe the Mets are favored.
Yeah, small favorite, right? Like 130, minus 130.
I don't even think it's that high. Yes, but the Mets are favored, so it's not even that. I never really count on wins for pitchers, anyways. It's more for the strikeout upside that Scherzer has. I think, especially kind of the recency bias, if you will, with Scherzer's 20 strikeouts. I think his ownership will be the big thing will also be rain. So that's kind of a hard question. I think if it stays around 50% chance, then his ownership will be a ton lower. So it's kind of dependent on that, but I think he'll be decently owned. He won't be as high as Kershaw though. So, and then let's move on to a pitcher. We have all these expensive guys. Let's move on to a pitcher that you're looking to kind of fade overall on the slate.
Yeah, so I didn't want to just pick a no-name guy here. I kind of took out the bottom class, but I don't like Kyle Hendricks tomorrow. Well, I don't love Kyle Hendricks tomorrow. He's 8,700 on FanDuel. His advanced stats look really good, but there are a few things I don't like. He doesn't have the best ballpark rating. It's the 5th lowest on the slate. I put together a quick trend on the Fantasy Labs Trends tool. A player with a salary between 8 and 9K, he's 87, with a game total of 9. Money line between minus 150 and minus 190. He's at minus 174. Pitchers fit that bill. They score a negative 5.06 on the plus minus scale. So I don't hate him, but there's plenty of other options that I'm just not going to have any of him tomorrow.
Yeah, that's fine. That's cool. I can get down with that. There's too many good pitchers that we don't need to worry about some of these guys that just don't have that upside. One of these studs, Kershaw, Bumgarner, Scherzer, Syndergaard will have a pretty good game. So a guy I'm looking at fading, and this is kind of more on DraftKings where I think people will think he's a very sneaky tournament play, is Zach Greinke. And the pitcher's not been solid this season. His pitch count is low. It's not too surprising seeing him move to a home field that is known as Coors Light. His average pitches per game is down significantly from previous years. His average fastball speed is also down. But the thing is, he's just 8,300 on DraftKings, which is a 90% bargain rating if you're kind of relating the two sites and seeing how much that stands out. And I believe it's the cheapest he's been on DraftKings in a long time. So I think people associating his name, maybe kind of forgetting, like, hey, he plays Chase Field the majority of the time and in this game. So they'll kind of attach the name to that price and get exposure to him when a lot of these pitchers are 4 or 5K more than him even. So with his cheap price, I'm not going to really bother with him on this slate, especially against the Yankees, who have the 3rd lowest strikeout rate in the entire league. So he's a fade for me. I think people will look at that cheap price and give him more exposure than I think he deserves. So let's with all these pitchers we got out of the way, obviously a lot of high priced guys. We highlighted Velasquez is an actually affordable pitcher, but let's move on to the next segment and talk about some batters, kind of cash tournament, any price. Who are 2 batters that you're looking on the slate?
Okay, so my first guy who I really like is George Springer, 4,200 on FanDuel. He's going against Carlos Rodon from the White Sox. Springer's lacing the ball lately. He's got 3 home runs in his last 5 games. His advanced stats are all there. 37 feet further, 9% hard hit differential, 4 mile per hour exit velocity. Fly balls have increased. Everything's right there. And then you go to Rodon, and everything's right there too. He's given up 20 feet further, 7% harder, 4 miles per hour faster. So he's got as good of a chance as anyone to dong tomorrow or today, whatever, when you watch it.
I never
he's got 7. He's got 7 pro trends among outfielders, which is the highest if Ricky Weeks isn't playing tomorrow.
I don't know, man.
If Ricky's playing, then he's got the edge. He doesn't have 15 today. But,
I think there's like a 95% chance Weeks plays the day after you recommend him on the pod. That's just how this stuff works.
Yeah. So back to Springer. He's 4th highest on the Bales model among outfielders, 2nd highest on CSU Rams model, and least importantly, he's the highest on my model. So
that's pretty good.
Yeah, he's got it working. And then my next guy is Corey Seager. I think you talked about him yesterday, so I thought I'd take my turn. Like you said yesterday, he's mashing. All of his advanced stats are up. I'm not going to waste anyone's time reading them all to you. And he's going against Weaver, which is a good idea. Weaver's ranked the lowest ranked pitcher on the Bales model. And Seager's hitting in the 2-hole, implied to score more than 4 runs. A trend on that, 2-hole hitters in a game where the implied total is between 4 and 4.5. They get almost a full point on the plus minus just from that alone. So those are my 2 guys. What do you think about them?
Yeah, I like them both. I think, there are a lot of tournament plays on the slate of guys who are kind of more expensive, not technically considered a value play because it's going to be hard to fit these guys. So they're going to have low ownership paired with these expensive pitchers. So 2 guys I'm looking at, and these are probably both strictly tournament plays because of their price points, and you just won't really be able to afford them, especially on DK where these pitchers are very expensive and there isn't a lot of value. The first one I'm looking at is Anthony Rizzo. I definitely want exposure to him in tournaments, maybe pair him with Velasquez, for example, in tournaments. But the Cubs are implied to score the most runs on the slate as of now. I like getting exposure to that team as a whole against Chase Anderson, who has been really, really poor this season. He's incredibly expensive is the problem. So I don't recommend paying up for him in cash. It'll make the rest of your team very difficult to fit. So I think with the ownership and kind of the Cubs as a whole, scoring a lot of runs in this game potentially, I like Rizzo quite a bit. You don't need to say too much about him as a player. He hits in the middle of the order, 393 WOBA, 279 ISO against righties. So like him a lot. And then another tournament play that I like a lot is Mark Trumbo. In tournaments mainly, and again, not in cash. He already has 3 games this season with double dongs. So kind of with that home run potential that he has, I think it's very important to get exposure to him when he's in good situations. So he gets to face lefty Wade Miley, who has allowed 7 of his 8 dongs this season to right-handed hitters. And then Trumbo himself has hit 5 dongs in just 35 at-bats against lefties this season. So that's a pretty insane home run rate. So in the past 12 months, you also look at Trumbo against lefties. He has a 249 ISO, which is solid. And then you look even further in his advanced stats, all of his batted ball differentials are positive. So Trumbo's another guy I'm looking at here. And after kind of highlighting these expensive hitters, let's move on to some cheap hitters so people can actually play people with the pitchers that we recommended. So who are a couple of value hitters you got that you're looking for on FanDuel?
Yeah, so I found 2 guys who are going to be really contrarian. That's just how I am. I like I'm a tournament player. I need to find the low-owned guys that are in a good enough position to that or have something working for them that they might do well. So my first guy is David Wright, and I like Max Scherzer tomorrow. But if you're not on Max Scherzer, you really need to look at David Wright. He doesn't get rostered against righties, but he's split indifferent. He's leading the league, or like you said earlier, he's leading the pros in hard hit percentage this year, 47.5%. He's got some of the best advanced stats, hard hit percent. He's hitting 55% fly balls over the last 15 days and 30% line drives. That only leaves 15% for ground balls. So, he's doing something right there. Despite all those, good stats, those good recent stats, he's scored in the terrible section on the pie chart 70% of the time in the last 10 games, negative 1.3 plus minus. So I think he's just getting unlucky is what it is. So, there's something to be said about the advanced stats. I don't know if I rely on them too much. I'm not sure. It's something I'm cognizant of. It's easy to pick someone who's doing good on the advanced stats and is producing fantasy points, but I think the real edge comes when you find someone who's got good advanced stats, but the fantasy points aren't coming. That's when you get the edge. So if you're not playing Scherzer, David Wright's going to be uber contrarian. I think he'll be like less than 2% owned.
I agree.
Almost positive.
Yeah.
My other guy, Ben Revere against the Nationals, and going against Syndergaard. So another guy that should be very low owned. He's struggling to put up points from the leadoff spot. His splits versus righties are a little bit positive. Nothing to brag about. That's not why I'm choosing him. Why I really like him is that if he gets on base, he's a pretty safe bet to try to swipe at least a base. Syndergaard gives up a lot more stolen bases than anyone else in the league. He's given up 15 this year. Ben Revere gets 1 every 5 games. So a team that's going to struggle to score runs in a pitcher's duel like it should be tomorrow, they're going to try to get him in scoring position. If he gets a single, if he draws a walk, they're really going to try to get him in scoring position for their big boppers, Rendon, Harper, Murphy. So that's kind of why I'm targeting him. He's also got a high hit or hard hit percentage, up 8%. His MPHs are up in the last 15 games. So he's got a chance to get on, and if he does, he's going to look to cause havoc.
Yeah, I really like that point you made. It's kind of the game flow of the game, kind of what we talk about a lot in football, kind of reading the game script. And this is a game you're not expecting a lot of runs, so the value of a steal is even heightened. And you look at a guy at the top of the order who, like you said, if he gets on base, their key focus is really going to try to drive him in. So I like that call a lot. I think it's a very sneaky tournament play. And then I'm with you with David Wright. You look at the advanced stats, he's hitting the ball really, really hard. And it's not a good matchup, and it's not a guy you'd ever look at even in cash. But for tournaments, you're taking the contrarian road, and some of these tournaments are, have a lot of people, so that's kind of how you pass people. So I like both those calls. 2 value hitters I'm looking at on DraftKings, and again, it's really hard to find cheap guys. I don't know what the threshold is that we even set our value hitters at in terms of salary, but I don't know. I might have cheated a little with this first one.
5K.
5K for
5K. Yeah, 5K.
No, it's 3. It's got to be like 3K.
I know.
Yeah, okay. Well, it should be 5K. This make this pod so much better. Just naming anybody except
anyone you like.
Yeah, but I'll start it off. This play is it's not quite a Ricky Weeks type play, but it might be close. But actually, no, it's not even the same league. But it's Matt Joyce, and this is only if Starling Marte remains on the paternity list for the birth of his daughter they just had. So it's obviously if Joyce plays only. They think the paternity list is a maximum of 3 days. So it could be you have to miss the next game when it's placed on paternity list, which he did today. So he could come back for this game. He might not. So we'll mark him as questionable and kind of read into that throughout the day tomorrow in the morning. But this is if Marte is out, and then even if Matt Joyce plays as even on his own right, even with Marte out. But the reason I like him a lot is Joyce has been a great pickup for this team, the Pirates. He's a guy I'm looking at to save some salary at just $3,300, which is pretty cheap on DraftKings. So opposing pitcher Aaron Blair of the Braves has 11 walks in just 4 starts. So he's been very inconsistent this season. Can't really locate the strike zone. So I like this Pirates team as a whole. I like getting exposure to them. Joyce, if he hits cleanup once again, I'm looking at targeting a guy who's affordable, hitting in a very good spot of the lineup, which is not easy to do on DraftKings. So Joyce kind of earned that playing time regardless. He has 5 home runs in just 43 at-bats this season. So he's one kind of value hitter I'm looking at if he plays. And then another guy I'm looking at quite a bit is Brandon Drury. He did hit in the 6 hole tonight, being Monday. He hit in the 8-hole the game before, did respond with 4 hits. He could move back to the 2-hole. He played there, I think, 6 or 7 games in a row lately. So we'll kind of see what they do with. They had Chris Owings in the 2-hole, and then they had Michael Bourne in the 2-hole as well. So we'll see where Drury ends up. Obviously, I like him a lot more if he's in the 2-hole. I still like him fine if he's in the 6-hole. If he's in the 8-hole again, he kind of moves down just a little bit. But I'm looking at him pretty hard in both formats, cash and tournament, especially at that price point on DraftKings. The Diamondbacks are implied to score a healthy amount of points. They're facing a healthy amount of runs. They're facing Michael Pineda, who is a very, very streaky pitcher, a guy you kind of want to attack, especially in tournaments. He's a very high dud percentage, higher than a lot of other starters. So Drury has a 357 WOBA, 205 ISO against righties in the last 12 months. Pineda's advanced stats are down in the last 2 weeks, and he also has the 3rd highest home run rate out of all pitchers on this slate. So I'm looking for Diamondbacks exposure, expect them to put up some runs. And if Drury is in a more favorable spot in the order, I'm looking to benefit on the discounted price, kind of getting exposure to this lineup. So that's another guy I like. And let's keep it moving and talk about stacks. I'm interested to hear your stack. Your twin stack definitely came through. A few of those plays. It was kind of hard to have exposure to Kurt Suzuki getting his first home run of the season. Who would have thought? But the call was there. So what's the team you're looking at to stack on this slate?
All right, so for tomorrow, I'm looking to stack the LA Dodgers. They're going against a right-handed Weaver. All batters 1 through 5 hit just fine against righties. If it's negative split, it's barely. So it's Chase Utley, Corey Seager, Justin Turner, Adrian Gonzalez, and Yasmani Grandal. Weaver's been killed on the road against righties this season, giving up a 480 WOBA and a 643 slugging percentage. So it's certainly something I'm going to look at. Now, those guys I named, some of them are lefties, but it's just I don't know where exactly I'm going to target yet, but I'm going to have some Dodger stacks, that's for sure.
Yeah, I like that call a lot. I'm going to cheat, and instead of stacking a team, I'm going to stack a game, just not one team. So I'm looking to stack the Twins-Tigers game. I thought it was a joke, actually, at first when I saw Phil Hughes and Mike Pelfrey going head-to-head. Hughes with his home run potential, people drop dongs on him all the time. And then Pelfrey, who I believe has one of the highest whips out of all starting pitchers and just generally a very poor pitcher at this point in his career. So I'm looking at kind of going 3 to 4 guys per team and, having each of them, so having 7 to 8 hitters in this game, and then pair them with a cheap pitcher, perhaps, again, going back to Velasquez, who I have a feeling I'll have a lot of exposure to, and then just stack this game. So I'm looking at guys like Miguel Sano, Trevor Plouffe, Byung-Ho Park, Brian Dozier, Ian Kinsler, JD Martinez, Miguel Cabrera, Nick Castellanos, kind of just mixing exposure to the top of the Tigers lineup and kind of the middle of the Twins. So that's what I'm looking at, mixing and matching exposure to these teams, targeting these pretty poor pitchers that have high dud upside. So that's what I'm doing.
Do you like that in cash or tournaments or both?
Oh, tournaments for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. If I'm going to stack a team in cash, it's going to be a team that's like, 5.2 runs implied or more with affordable prices as well. So yeah, I think a lot of people actually this season kind of have been stacking in cash. It's a lot easier kind of on some of these games where you just have such a bad pitcher in a good hitter's park, where their team is really good. You have, of course, field, of course, is a factor. A lot of people kind of stack those games in cash. So I think on those slates, you want to pivot away from those guys in tournaments a little more so. And then on these, these teams, I mean, you look at the Tigers, they're implied to score a pretty decent amount. So I don't think they'll be contrarian stack, but I think stacking this game overall will be a bit contrarian. But
the Twins will have enough contrarian edge to it that'll be just fine with the Tigers. Tigers are 4.7, Twins are 4.3.
Right.
Both have value ratings in the 70s, though, mid-70s. So that's a good call. I like it.
Yeah, definitely going to stack the game. And for all you guys in stacking game, being around Coors Field, there's nothing better than stacking a game and then going to that game in person is a truly euphoric experience. But let's keep it moving. We got to wrap this up kind of soon, I guess, but it's not a big deal. Let's go on to the stat of the day. What's your stat of the day for this slate?
Okay, so when I was doing my research, I noticed that there's a lot of pitchers who give up stolen bases tomorrow. Noah Syndergaard 14 stolen bases. I think I said 15 earlier. He's got 14 stolen bases, which is tops in the majors. People stealing against him. Ubaldo Jimenez, 7. That's 4th in the majors this year. Colin Ray is 6. Porcello, Jared Weaver, Chris Archer all have 5. Greinke and Cole Hamels have 3 each. All those guys are in the top 30. So it's certainly a day where if you want to, you're going to have to try to find some value plays if you're going to get your Kershaws in your starting lineup. So a lot of those speed guys, like I talked about earlier, they've got some stolen base potential if you get them in the right spot. What do you got?
Yeah, that's a good one. I like I think the steal is underutilized, especially for some of these guys who aren't like Billy Hamilton fast, but they still have steal upside given the right circumstance. So I like that. The stat of the day I'm looking at is Clayton Kershaw, and it's not like I'm trying to sell you guys on playing him. It's just more of something that stood out is that he's a 72% consistency percentage in the last 12 months, and I just kind of want to stress that for you guys who are playing cash games that this is exactly what we look for when selecting pitchers in cash games is players who have a high floor and are incredibly consistent, as well as have a high upside, which Kershaw does. So I know he's crazy expensive and you're going to have to dig deep on these value plays, but his consistency alone is kind of worth it for cash. That's obviously the highest consistency percentage out of any pitcher on this slate. And as a bonus, digging deeper, you look in the last month, he's an 80% consistency and 40% upside, which are both the highest out of all pitchers. So as if you needed anything else to play Kershaw, there it is. But let's keep moving. Let's get into the bold call of the day. What do you got for us?
All right, so Vince Velasquez, he's got the 10th highest salary on the slate on FanDuel. He's going to be a top 3 fantasy point scorer tomorrow.
Raw points? What site? I guess
FanDuel.
Similar. Okay.
FanDuel.
Okay. FanDuel top 3.
So that means who are the studs we have? Kershaw, Bumgarner, Scherzer,
Syndergaard.
Yeah, so he's got to pass it.
Pelfrey.
Yeah. So he's got to pass at least 2 of those studs.
Okay, I like that call. Yeah, I think Velasquez will be I think he's a great tournament play. He's actually affordable. You can get some of these expensive bats a little bit, still maintain somewhat of a similar upside. But the bold call I think we've just been giving Kershaw way too much love. I'm even wearing a Dodgers hat right now randomly.
Yeah.
We're just giving Kershaw way too much love on this pod, so I need to end that a little bit in my bold call. So my bold call is that Kershaw won't be on the winning lineup in the DraftKings Super Fastball tomorrow on the slate, which I don't know if you've looked at yet, but it's a really, really awesome tournament. It's a great tournament for all you guys out there to play. It's just a $33 buy-in, and first place gets 6 figures, $100K. So it's definitely a tournament. I'm going to throw a good amount of entries in there, mix exposure. I'm still going to have some Kershaw, but
no.
I'm going to be under the field. I'm going to be much under the field. So whatever the percentage owned of Kershaw is, I will have like a fourth of that. So, that's my bold call. And yeah, that tournament, 17,000 people and change. So if you're playing that, for all you guys, just remember to get a bit contrarian, kind of go over some of these plays we highlighted that are going to be a little bit under the radar. And yeah, that's the bold call of the day. So that about wraps up the pod. You got any kind of final words for people playing this slate or how you're attacking it?
When we do this research the night before, it's hard to really plan out exactly what your lineup's going to look like. So I really don't know yet, but I'm gonna be on high price pitchers. And then I'll have a lot of Velasquez too, but don't try to get too cute and avoid all the high price pitchers.
Yeah, that's definitely my advice as well. I think that you just look at ceiling with all these pitchers, and an average pitcher just doesn't have the ceiling that Kershaw or Scherzer with 20 strikeouts has. So you don't really want to fade these guys all together. I think for me personally, I'm going to look at my contrarian plays more as some of these value hitters, kind of target speed a little bit, since a lot of these home run hitters are priced up, kind of just mix and match these cheap guys that you can afford with these high-priced pitchers. I think it's probably the best way to go about it. And then, of course, fit some stacks in. Like we mentioned, a few teams that we like on this slate, and kind of get exposure to some of these teams that have high upside. So that's it for the pod.
there's so many aces going tomorrow that, like, how often do you have a podcast where Syndergaard's throwing and he's not one of the plays? You know, like compared to Monday's podcast, it's like it's night and day for sure.
I just blocked out that slate from my memory altogether. You know, this slate is so much better. We got juicy tournaments. We have pitchers who are actually good at throwing baseballs. Unlike we didn't have anybody kind of on the slate. So, yeah, that's it for the pod, though, you guys. Brandon, thanks a lot for joining us 2 nights in a row. Really appreciate it. Well, Brian's out on vacation. I hope he's enjoying that as well, of course. And I'll be back with you guys again tomorrow night. What is tomorrow night? Tuesday night? Yeah, Tuesday night to break down the Wednesday slate, and I'll have a special guest for you guys. So until then, good luck, everybody, on this slate.
Good luck.